Awesome. Welcome to the School of Humankind. It is the first Tuesday talk. We are in March. This month's theme, we're talking about emotions. And today on the panel, we have four of our faculty members, myself included. And I want everybody to do a quick roundabout introduction of themselves. We have John, one of the co-founders, and Angela, another co-founder, and then Wyndham. So I'm just going to let everybody take a little chance, give themselves a little introduction of who they are, what they do, and what they bring to School of Humankind. And then we're going to get started. John, let's start with you.
Thank you, Amanda. I work with people, encouraging them to put creativity at the heart of their lives. Uh, I work with organizations to try to help people communicate and connect better, all drawing out of 30 years' work as a performer, a trainer of performers, and a director of performance. I also write books and paint pictures, which is what you can see cluttering up my study behind me. Uh, that's me.
Awesome. Angela, second co-founder. Let's hear about your story and who you are.
Yes, I am sitting in the middle of nowhere, Saskatchewan. Actually, a little bit more somewhere than you, Amanda. Just kidding. But so I help busy professionals understand their softer sides of life, which really is their emotions, so that they can experience true relaxed productivity and live more resilient, purpose-filled, and fun lives. So John and I, yes, we're the co-founders of School of Humankind, where we just love to bring amazing people together to have conversations about anything people want to help us with this tricky thing called life. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Perfect. Thank you. Wyndham,
Thank you,
did I say
Amanda.
that right?
I'm Wyndham. I am the Blueprint Coach, and I've wrestled with the title of what I do for a while, but I'm just going with it now. I am a life coach. All right. I don't necessarily use dream catchers, although I can. I'm a life coach, and I focus specifically or particularly on the miserably successful at that point in their life when they've realized all the attainment isn't fulfilling. And I help them connect to and create a life they really want to live. And I do that through the blueprint philosophy and the 246 framework, all of which is going to be succinctly contained in a book coming out later this month.
This month, when
Awesome.
well done.
That's the plan. Yeah.
Impressive.
Perfect. Well, I'm Amanda Bussiere. I'm a mindset coach and I help high performance individuals break through their limiting beliefs, get out of the burnout, and start creating more balance in their life by figuring out what's actually causing the burnout and what they're spending their energy on and what they can start taking out of their life and create more balance in all areas of their life called wealth. And I help those high performing individuals get there. So that is what I bring to the table. Today, we are talking about the CEO of your life and what does that mean to each of us? And being a CEO of a business, you're the chief executive officer, right? So that means you're the person in charge. You're the person that makes the big, heavy decisions. You're the person that thinks outside of the box and looks for opportunities. You're also the person that has to deal with the heat when things do go wrong. So we are actually each individually CEOs of our own life, but some of us don't act like it. We just want to be we want to be the employee and the follower when we're following society or we're following our friends or whatever. We're not actually taking charge of our own life, taking charge of our own thought patterns, our emotions. And so what I want to discuss today with each one of our faculty members is what what does it mean to them to each be a CEO of their own life, chief emotional officer? I want to know what that means to you and how do you actually start implementing that into your life? Let's start with you, John.
Okay, well, I'm going to start off by being grumpy. Uh, I reject the notion, the metaphor of a human as a company with a CEO. The metaphors that we use matter. I mean, people say, oh, the body is hardware and your thinking is software. if we use that metaphor, we treat ourselves like computers, and it's a flawed analogy. There's some truth in it, but it's flawed. If we treat ourselves as a company where there is somehow an I, John, am in charge of the elements of Johnness, we create a metaphor which I think is unsustainable. My emotions are not subordinates or different awkward departments for me to control. So I I'm going with the metaphor, and I'm going to go, yeah, I'll work with it, but I want to register from the beginning that I am grumpy in relationship to this metaphor. We are not corporations, and we do not live by a control and command internal economy. Given that, what is a CEO for me? Well, emotions are great. They're really important, but we have to understand that they are unreliable. Your emotion in response to any moment, essentially, as I understand it, comes from three places. It comes from, first of all, whatever has stimulated that reaction, which might be external or internal. Secondly, it comes from the current physiological state you're in. I'm a diabetic. If I'm hungry, my emotions are very different to if I'm not hungry. And thirdly, your emotions come from what your expectations are, and your expectations are based on your past. So your emotions are not always to do with what you think they're about, and they're never entirely to do with what you think they're about. So emotions are valuable information. They're important to respect. They're integral to me. All of those things, but they're not reliable. So if I'm going to be a CEO, it's not going to be a chief emotional officer. It's going to be a careful emotional observer. Ooh, is this the Oscars where you get musicked off the stage when it gets to 1.5 minutes? That's really
Yes.
2.5 minutes.
Your mic slowly sunk into the stage.
I'll go with it. I'll go with it. So yes, I'm the chief emotion. I'm the careful emotional observer of my life.
Ooh,
Love that. Love that. All right, Angela, you don't
okay.
want to go next?
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm just like, there's so much to say. I
I
am less
know.
grumpy than John. However, less prepared as well because I had a visitor jump in my life this morning, and so I just pushed them out to do this. But anyway, Chief Emotional Officer. I personally believe, so what I love to teach my clients is about the belief cycle. So it's like your beliefs give rise to your thoughts, that produces an emotion, gives rise to actions, and then the outcomes going reinforcing your beliefs. So emotions to me are super, super important because they're the information we get from our subconscious that tells us how we feel about something and then what you should do about it. So negative emotions are the biggest, most wonderful thing to experience because it just gives us that information that, hey, I need to actually further investigate this because is this true? Is this negative emotion true? And that gives rise to really awareness and self-reflection on what's really going on in our life. So where I come from, I've got this engineering background, and just through the nature of our work, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember the cartoon Dilbert, but Dilbert is famously emotionless. Everyone in that engineering office has no emotions. And just through the nature of our work, we're taught that the numbers will always give us the right decision. And it's almost like our emotions are bred out of us, almost to the point where we cannot trust them anymore because we've lost track of what makes us happy, what gives us passion, what all of this stuff does. What I learned was that I can manipulate my numbers to tell me whatever I want them to tell me to help me get a project through or not. But what I've really found to be true is emotions will always tell us the truth if we finally hone them and we understand the information that we're looking at. So I love being the CEO, but that just means learning to understand what our emotions are telling us.
Perfect.
Ba-bing.
Wyndham.
Thank you. It's so interesting hearing others. That's my word, by the way, interesting. I say it far too much, but it is true. It is very interesting to hear other people speak on this. I think for me, it's a piece of both of what we've heard already. I was separated from my emotions, or certainly a great swathe of my emotions as a kid, as what we all are. We're rewarded for being happy and compliant, and we're often less rewarded, or I'm not saying we're punished, but the more negative, considered negative emotions are less welcome. And I think as a CEO, I'm going to go with a metaphor as well. Our role is to get deeply reconnected with our emotions, to really get in and explore them because they are real. But as John said, they're unreliable. They are real for a time and a place in our life when something happened and they're set. I talk about the blueprint, and within our blueprint is a whole load of automation. There is no decision making with our emotions until we interrupt that automatic. The emotion happens, reaction happens, and then we behave in a certain way with no cognitive input. And if that is happening, then whatever age we were when that automation was set, when that dysregulation of our emotion was set, that age version of us is running our emotions and running our lives. Now, I'm 50 this year. I had a big revelation a couple of years ago that my 11-year-old self was running my reaction in a whole raft of areas of my life because I've never addressed it. So for me, it's working to not be afraid of our emotions. They are 100% human. We cannot feel anything that is not human, in which case we should feel it all. We should get to know it all. And once we've done that, we can then start being a bit more discerning, recognizing that I know a lot more than my 11-year-old self knew. The world has changed. I have changed. It is on me to challenge those reactions and rewrite that automation and then challenge the new automation.
Love
Is that from a film?
I guess, but
Yes,
just Zoom.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to turn it off unless I click X before the numbers run out. So I apologize.
I think it's brilliant
There's
just to be buzzed off on your own bloody Zoom call. I mean, what on earth is technology coming to?
I feel like I should be wearing a ball gown. I must leave now.
so that reminds me of the movie Inside Out, the children's movie. They
Mm.
talk about all the emotions and everything, and then they brought in anxiety this last movie, and talking about how anxiety can be helpful, very helpful, right? Because it's like your body's going into that fight or flight mode, but then it's like also, like you said, bringing awareness to it. And how are you going to react from that emotion? So all these emotions come up, and emotions are super important for us to experience because we want to feel love, we want to feel joy, we want to feel excitement, and we also want to know what makes us angry and agitated. But then how do we react to it? And like you said, those were ingrained in us when we were little. And how are we going to show up differently now is totally up to us. Like John said, right? We're the, CEO, but we are in charge of it now and how we move forward. I believe CEO should mean like chief energy officer. You're in charge of your own energy and how you express it, how you allow your own energy to go out towards other people and how their energy projects onto you. which is the external environment. So if you get triggered by certain things in the external environment, you are in complete control of it. And you will have emotions that'll come up, but it's how do you deal with it? And how do you move forward? I talked a lot more before when we started my version of it, but yeah, I also am a firm believer of those people that don't know how to process their emotions. It'll attach to our bodies. So when you have these bad emotions that come up and it's an anxiety and you just push it down, you don't actually deal with it. That's where your body will attach it to certain body parts. You'll start getting pain, and it could actually cause autoimmune disease because your body is at dis-ease. Your body isn't in harmony. It's not in alignment. I actually felt, and then when I talk about burnout, this is a prime example because we're pushing ourselves. We're allowing the stress to come in, and then our body will go into burnout or will go into a stressful state. And we could cause different sicknesses that come in. Like I ended up getting sick. So I had to check in with myself. What's going on? So I'm lack of sleep. So it's all these emotions that I was feeling and I was allowing it to take over my body. Whereas if I actually dealt with it at the time and understood what was going on, that I wouldn't have to be living in that state of what I was at. What's up, Ange? You're nodding your head.
No, you're right. I was just nodding in agreement with what you're saying.
I think there's something really interesting about, well, certainly that I've been working with about this binary delineation of good and bad emotion. That there are no good or bad emotions. There are just our emotions, and they give us information, they guide us, they warn us, they do all these different things, and it's kind of come to a head when you're dealing with things like grief and loss. They're not good or bad. They're giving us information. And for me, it was a big moment when I realized that actually grief cannot exist in the absence of love. So although we would assign good and bad to one of those, it is simply, for me now, it is simply an experience I can have where I can hold both of those two things in my mind at the same time and in my heart and in my body at the same time. So I'm working quite hard to not use terms like, sorry, my cat is a distraction. But I try not to use terms like good and bad. It is information, and it's up to me to figure out what that information is telling me and then what I'm going to do with it.
And what you're going to do with your cat while you're at it.
Yes. He can't even hear it. I said we have to make fun of him until he puts his mouth. Oh,
sorry. Have you seen Empire Strikes Back, where they trip over the four-legged walkers? That's what my cat was doing with my headphone lead then. Sorry.
yes, we enjoyed it.
Sorry.
So, Amanda, would you like to do official rebuttal discussions, or are we free flow now?
Free flow now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to pick up on something there. Having started off grumpy, and I'm not unduly grumpy, but I'm going to remain grumpy because that's just how it's going to be today. There's an awful lot in what you all three, for me, what you're saying is really important. The understanding that one of the three strands of emotion is our brain's choice of an appropriate response to what's going on in the world, and that choice is almost always predicated on past experience. So yes, it's your 11-year-old running the system. And that process of decoding that automated emotional response to things does involve a certain amount of looking back and saying, what is triggering me here, or what is causing me to think this, or why do I really want to do these things when actually I no longer even enjoy doing these things, but my emotions go, oh, I love doing this thing. I don't love doing this thing. I hate doing this thing, but I'm still doing this thing, or whatever. So that process of looking back and decoding is really powerful. I think where it becomes problematic, and this is again where I kind of dismiss a little bit the CEO metaphor, the idea of decision making. There is always a danger that we think we can arrive at the truth, that we can make a decision which is the best decision, that our emotions are true. Our emotions contain a truth, but they do not contain the truth. Because to say that there is the truth, in other words, this would be the best way, the right way to respond, or this is the right decision to make, is based on the idea that in some way, like a CEO of a company, we think we can control the future, and we can't. So I recognize that when I look at emotions and I try to decode the things that are triggering them and so on, they are revealing truths to me. But all that that reveals to me is what is likely to be the best guess I can make about choices today to aim towards the future. So I want to resist the notion that, I mean, Angela, you said emotions will tell us the truth, and I, I hear it and I respect it, but I want to say no, they don't. Emotions will tell us a truth, but if you go and have a decent meal, it might tell you a different truth because you might be hungry, or if a different part of you, not the 11-year-old, but the 27-year-old is suddenly at play, you'll discover a different truth. So that's why I want to go back to saying I want to be the, careful emotional observer. I want to observe them all and take my best guess rather than believe in any notion of truth. I said I was
And
being grumpy.
I can accept that, John, that there's, and I don't mean an absolute truth, but I believe your purpose in life is to experience joy. And if we are true to that and listen to our emotions as data as to where we get joy when, no matter whether it's subjective, like it's my 7-year-old self telling me I really enjoy this, I would say soak it up. Because we know that even if you always search for joy, you will always continue to grow in your most, using a weird term, but aligned self. Because even if we have our favorite meal, if we have it every day, it is no longer your favorite meal. So we as humans always need growth. So if this meal gives me joy today, it might not give me joy tomorrow, but then I have to look, what is that meal that's going to give me joy the next day? And that will continue the growth in this metaphor of my taste buds, but it's also of experiences. It's we as humans always need that growth. So if we focus on the emotion of joy, and we look at all the other emotions as information and wheedle our way into how can this actually bring me joy, this information, then I think we are always on this continual, beautiful human path of growth.
Mm.
And that's
Which,
like being your decision, like that's kind of molding your future. That's choosing to have a happy future and bringing in everything that gives us joy. Like when you learn a new experience and you don't like it, you can actually find joy in that because it's like, oh, I found something I actually didn't like. So there's a whole section of my life that I don't have to focus on anymore. So yay. So it's all just like switching perspectives on this search for joy. And I'm sorry I interrupted you, Wyndham.
no, it's all right. And your additional point there is really helpful because if we're always looking to experience joy, and I agree, I think there is, like I said earlier, you can hold two seemingly conflicting emotions in your head and heart at the same time. And that whole idea of identifying something that isn't bringing us joy, we can then move beyond it. There's actually a whole raft of things in life that the actual doing of the thing, certainly to begin with, as we build resilience and we build skill and we build capability, is not joyful. It's painful or uncomfortable or whatever it might be. So being able to say, okay, this is painful and I find joy in it because I can see the growth I am getting and I know it's moving me forward, is, I think, one of the most important emotional skills to develop. Having the ability to hold multiple things, especially when stuff is horrible and hard and painful. In that moment, can you find peace and joy in the fact that it's horrible and painful? And because that's going to move us forward as human beings. We're not. I think I like the idea that our purpose is to experience joy. I'm not sure I agree with it, but I like it. But being able to hold future joy through current discomfort, I think, is essential.
There's an idea here that I work with coaching clients and creativity clients quite often, which I think is really useful, which are two Greek words, which I probably chatted about before with you, Wyndham, but the Greek word of hedonia and eudaimonia, which are two different forms of joy. Hedonia is immediate joy, from which the word hedonism comes, and eudaimonia is, it's not deferred joy, it's a sense of fulfillment, a sense that you are fulfilling some kind of purpose, whatever. Now, in terms of emotion, hedonia is pretty much a solid emotional response. I'm loving it. Yeah. That's an emotional response. Eudaimonia, which is about fulfillment, and this talks directly to what you were saying, Wyndham. Eudaimonia is a sort of rational decision, which is not necessarily purely an emotional decision. It's a synthesis of mindfulness and reason and emotion, a sort of rational decision to say, I will do this and put up with the discomfort, the emotional or whatever discomfort, the feeling of, fear and whatever, because I have decided that I want to aim for this direction, that I foresee or I imagine will give me satisfaction sometime in the future. So it brings me back to this sense that just because you have an emotion doesn't mean it's true, because sometimes your emotion might be going, I don't want to do this. And at that point, you go, yeah, but there is a deeper or an other truth, an other true emotion, which is, I want to be the sort of person who will do this. Even if I don't want to do this, I want to be the sort of person who will do this. Or I want to be the sort of person who 10 years from now will look back and know that I had the courage to do this. So it's always this synthesis between reflection, contemplation, thought, rationality, and emotion. And emotion is such a crucial part of that, but it is not the only thing in the recipe.
It's putting me in mind of, I talk a lot to my clients about mechanism and meaning. Anything we do, everything we do is a mechanism, and it is in service to a deeper meaning. If we are not crystal clear on that deeper meaning for us, then it is in service to somebody else's deeper meaning. And I think what you touched on there, I think, is really important, is we've all, I imagine, been in situations where it's been uncomfortable, the emotions have been hard, and we've stayed in that situation longer than we should have. And so I think it's important to highlight that this isn't a case of battling through all negative emotion, just sticking with it and pushing through is the way forward, because in very many cases, it's actually what I would benefit most from here is finding a way to sever this and move away completely and create a new environment where I can fill it with the search for joy and all those things. So having the capacity to acknowledge our emotion and then the curiosity and the awareness to really drill into it to go, okay, can I see this being in service to me somehow? Because if it isn't, if it is in service to somebody or something else, then more drastic action, I think, removal of ourselves from a situation or whatever it might be, I think is a sensible way forward. But in other situations where it is in service to ourselves, the perseverance and the euthymania.
Euthymia.
I was
Although
going to
any
ask
Greek
you,
person would.
you need a list to say that? Leave them a name.
It's a Greek D in it, which is a th, and every time I try to say it, sort of Greeks laugh at me. So, I am not claiming any Greekness here. Any Greeks watching live on LinkedIn will be going, "That's not how you say it."
I think,
I think
if you do the sorry, Amanda, if you do the Coles note about your emotions, if there's a negative emotion or what we would interpret as bad, and we just say, hey, this is growth, just immediately just blanket statement, I'm growing somehow, and that's why I have this negative emotion. And then you can kind of alleviate that stress of that negative pull down almost immediately because you're in this curious mode of what is this growth that I'm feeling? And then go into it deeper, whether it's like serving other people or whatevs. Sorry, Amanda.
I think we all have a common grounding of self-awareness is number one key. Being aware of your emotions. I feel like that is kind of a common thread that we've all discussed about.
Yeah, I would talk about it in terms of mindful observation. Uh, that sense of always being willing to be half a step separated from oneself while also being completely immersed in oneself. So this is a performer's mindset. This is what really interesting. And a performer is absolutely, utterly present in her dance or her performance. And at the same time, with a quiet mind, is observing the performance and just going, yeah, yeah, there's an echo in this room. Slow down your speaking a little bit. The stage is slightly bigger than we rehearsed on. Just remember to take that move slightly further to the right than we would have done. So there is just this quiet observational mind and a complete immersion in the moment by moment experience of what they're doing, which is called presence. Now, that for me, that's for me what the self-awareness is. It's the ability to go, I, I feel this. I really feel this. And there is a part of me that's going, interesting. Let's, let's know that we're feeling it and go with it, but don't get swept away with it. And so yeah, it is a form of I use a slightly different term, but it is definitely a form of self-awareness and a form of mental maturity, a willingness to go, I have done the work to learn to observe myself without disconnecting from myself.
John,
Yeah,
that's a beautiful way to say that.
Yeah, it's the removal of self-judgment on these things. It's like this is just what is, but even with that, it's having the ability to strip the story away from what is. So actually really connecting to the emotion itself rather than the sense it generates in us, which is all part of our previous conditioning and the behaviors we adopted in order to keep us safe. It's having that ability to strip all of that away and go, this is what is, no judgment. There is no good or bad. This is just what is. Now, Angela, how do I learn from this? I'm growing. What is there to learn? How do I move this forward?
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful, Wyndham. Because maybe, you say strip away the story. You go, oh, I'm feeling bad. What does this mean? Well, it might mean you're hungry.
Are
or
you
it
hungry, John?
might.
You've focused on
Are
food a
you
lot
hungry,
today.
No,
John?
I've just had my dinner, thank you. I'm a little bit stuffed. That's why I can
Angry.
talk about it. Otherwise, I'd be getting really grumpy. I'm not grumpy from lack of um no, but might it mean? It might mean, I didn't sleep well last night. That's what it might actually mean. It might mean I've been writing about anxiety today because I'm creating a course for School of Humankind on anxiety. Um, and I was writing about my experience at boarding school where I, had the most god awful time for a number of years. What might this thing that I'm feeling feel? What might it mean? It might mean that 40 years ago some unpleasant things happened to me. That's what it might mean. So if we strip away the story, we can instead go, what is this telling me? What's it telling me now? And that's why I reject a little bit the idea of the emotions containing a truth, as opposed to the emotions containing their own sort of truth in this moment, because they are, as you said, Wyndham, they're very real at the moment that they're happening, but the story that they carry may not be real at all.
Mm.
So what I want to add as well is with this level of awareness, we can, get information, blah, 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 blah. But sometimes it just feels really good to crash into a wall of negative emotion and just sit in there and just
Yeah.
like say, I feel like crap and I want to bitch to all my girlfriends about this. And it feels good. And I think that is also something that we have to allow ourselves because that's the human experience. That's, I just and it's something later on from the higher point of awareness. Feeling these ups and downs is so sweet because as Wyndham started this talk with, if you don't feel the grief, you will never feel the sweetness of love and vice versa. So I think the whole emotions and the whole savoring of wherever you are on this emotional scale is life. It's the human
Mm.
experience, and it's something I really treasure, and that I hope, especially busy professionals, as we are weaned off of our emotions, as we are told in the boardroom, this does not belong here, that we don't forget that because it is such a beautiful part of being human. And so if someone is wallowing, sometimes you just got to step in the mud pit with them, and that's the best way to comfort them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I have a vast capacity to wallow. And
Yay.
then it is about how do I when is this enough? Because in the past I've not been able to find that moment where it's like enough now. It's becoming indulgent now rather than part of my process and my experience. I'm getting better at. I'll give myself today, and then tomorrow I'll be better tomorrow. But
Yeah.
giving yourself the time, I 100% agree. Giving yourself the time, but I feel shit today. Cool. Feel that way.
I want to go back to the performance mindset for a moment because there's also just this wonderful thing where if you're in a comedy, often when you're performing a comedy, you might get laugh from the audience. And in certain kinds of comedy, like pantomimes, whatever, you can play the laugh and you can ad lib and you can da da da. And it's amazing because you're just in the flow doing it. But always the performer has to go, if I do this too long, I lose the structure of the performance. I lose the show. And then it's, the same way. There are moments where you go, I just feel awful. I'm just going to sink into it. But always somewhere that little thing saying, yeah, for today, but not for tomorrow, or for this week, but not for next week. Always this little observing voice that goes, if you've fallen off the path or taken a detour, don't worry about it, mate. That's okay. Get back on the path. Not now, not beat yourself up. Get back on the path. But you're heading back to the path. And the path is, yeah, it's a path of growth and purpose and fulfillment and, joy and so on.
Perfect. I'm going to open this up. Did any of our joiners have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I just firstly just wanna thank you for the invite and the topic is hitting home. Simply because I feel like having that relationship with emotions, it's not an easy thing, right? I feel like sometimes you get to a point where we just suppress our emotions, and at the end of the day, it comes back. So, with this, what I've learned from this conversation is that emotions are there to teach us something. And it's only when we have that relationship with them where we'll be able to understand the message. So we have to be aware of the emotions, acknowledge them. And with that, then you can be able to not just take the painkiller because you're feeling the pain, but sit back and think, where is this pain coming from? What is this pain here to teach me? Only when you are able to do that, then you are going to be able to build that relationship with emotions. And I feel like that's just a gradual thing that we'll forever like learn in terms of emotions. So yeah, that was just my 2 cents. And I'm like, thank you so much. This was very informative for me, very helpful, because it just creates a foundation on really how to work, how to have that relationship with emotions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's beautifully articulated, the
Mm.
notion of not taking a painkiller to dull the pain before you've at least asked yourself what's causing the pain. I think that's a beautiful articulation. Now that's a metaphor I'm really happy with.
Yeah, because there are times when you identify it, when you feel it and identify and go, this is about this. I'm not ready for that. There's not somewhere I can go right now. But I know that now, so I can do something to manage this emotion until I am ready. And we will get ready. We will get to a place where we are ready, especially Oscar, as you say, in that kind of it's a lifelong journey and it is an incremental process. The more we engage with our emotions, the better we get at engaging with our emotions, the better we process. And there is they get burned in the fire of the crucible of dealing with them. If we avoid them, like you say, they're always there. They're just kind of maybe we can quieten them for a moment, but they'll come back and they'll come back louder. And so that short period of pain dealing with them leads to a much longer period of peace.
And I think it's a really good reflection on what we're seeing a lot today in terms of addictions, because no matter what you're addicted to, it's usually trying to numb an emotion that you don't know what to deal or how to deal with it. So I really appreciate you bringing that point to the fore because so many people are just running away from their emotions through an addiction. And it doesn't have to be a substance. It can be just I'm avoiding doing something because it's going to make me feel bad and I don't know how to process it. So I think it's something we need to help people understand how to be more resilient through your emotions. So great point. Thank you for raising it.
Yeah, there's research that I think Brené Brown did that the vast majority of people can name three emotions. I'm mad, I'm sad, or I'm glad. And we do not have the language for our emotions. So a recommendation of mine would be Google search for an emotion wheel, a wheel of emotion, and it won't be all of them, but it will start to and these are segmented. Essentially, those three, and there are others that sit in the center as well, but they're segmented. So right at the very heart, they're these big, powerful. I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm glad, and then at one step removed, they'll start breaking down what each of those might actually be. It might be resentment, or it might be anxiety, or it might be happiness or joy, or whatever it might be. And then another degree out, they break them down even further. So we can start playing with the language of these so we can actually start being a bit more nuanced in what we're dealing with.
There is a whole lot of research that goes alongside that, which goes, if when we're young, we do not learn the names for emotions, we never learn the capacity fully to feel them, because we can't tell the difference between I'm feeling sad because I've lost something, or I'm feeling angered because something was taken from me. We call it, I feel bad. And so we don't actually have the ability, we don't learn the ability to separate things out and therefore be able to see them. We just say, I feel like crap. I mean, that can mean anything, but without actually training children and continuing to train ourselves in the language of nuanced emotion, saying, there's a difference between melancholy and grief. They're actually just different things. And, there's no point in saying I'm feeling grief. For years, I would talk about this in a session I ran for School of Humankind on Tuesday. I said I was really stressed. I wasn't. I was anxious. Once I knew the right word for what I was feeling, I could begin the process of decoding what I was feeling. So I'm going all the way with you there, Wyndham. Get the language with which to understand the nature of what you're feeling. The research goes on into really interesting places where people who, in Welsh there's words for emotions which there aren't the words for in English, and so English people don't feel those emotions, but Welsh people do. So you get this sense that without the word, people just don't feel the emotion, which is a really interesting idea, but way outside the realm of what we're talking about here. So,
And our body, our physical vessel, doesn't know the difference. It's what the attachment to the emotion that we put on it. That because when we're excited and all that, you get that like heart rate's going up, and but the same thing happens when you're anxious or when you're stressed. Same thing, but your body doesn't know what's going on. It's what we tell it.
Absolutely. And so then we get to the whole thing about, if you are feeling something, you can actually reframe it if you have the language to do it in. Where you go, I'm not actually feeling sad, I'm actually feeling a bit angry. And in that reframe, you begin to see, what you can do about it. But if you don't have the language, you can't do the reframing.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you all. This was a great conversation and different viewpoints, angry or not, grumpy or not.
Oh, I'm not grumpy anymore. I'm
I
much
loved
happier
it.
now.
Perfect. And I want to thank our guests for joining us and whoever watched us live. Thank you for joining us. And please sign up for our newsletter. John works endlessly to provide a newsletter that gets sent out. And so you can stay in touch with each one of us and see what all we have to offer in the School of Humankind. So make sure you register. You can go to www.schoolofhumankind.com. We revamped our brand and we have so many new exciting things coming in. So make sure you follow us on any platform, Facebook, LinkedIn, so you can see what we're up to.
And as a preview of this week's newsletter, which goes out on Friday, I'm going to be asking a big question. There we go. That's all I'm going to say now. And it's not because I don't know what the question is yet. I do know what the question is. It's all I'm going to say right now.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all.